Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we continue our five-part series entitled 5 Things That Couples Typically Will Differ, today we will talk about finances. Finances, considered by many, is one of the most critical areas that couples often differ, and surprisingly, it's finances, not infidelity, that more frequently will lead to the dissolving of the marriage. Let's define finances. It is the management of assets as they relate to banking, allocation of funding in terms of what goes where, investments, procurement, what do we purchase, what do we not purchase, and the settlement of debts. What do we pay, what do we not pay? So finances is the management of assets as they relates to banking, allocating of the funds, investing, procurement, and the settlement of debts within the family relationship. Couples and finances are different. So you have a husband, you have a wife, they come from two different backgrounds. How they view finances will vary. The number one area of conflict because of this variation in most marriages appears to in some manner be connected to finances. So you come from two historically different and normally geographically different locations, and how you define finances and how those finances are managed will typically be one of the critical areas of conflict. And it is always linked to where you were raised, how you were raised, and the philosophy of funds. Utah State University professor Dr. Jeffrey Dew found that couples who argue about money at least once per week are more than 30 times more likely to divorce than couples who only talk about money maybe once a month at the most. Dr. Dew also found that among women, finances and sex were the most probable predictors of divorce. Dr. Dew also found that finances, without exception, was the biggest predictor of divorce among men. His findings were really presented at the National Conference of Family Relations in December of 2009. It may sound a little bit shocking, may sound a little bit surprising, that Dr. Dew would find with females at the top of their list that would lead to divorce was finances and sex, because women connect finances with intimacy. They connect finances with security. And oftentimes, if the finances, the security cannot be reconciled in a female's mind, then she also correlates that with sex. In other words, it's very difficult for a female to be sexually intimate with her mate if she's not clear in her mind regarding the security of the finances. Now, if that is inappropriately brought into the relationship, the female can also conclude that if she does not control the family finances, then the finances of the family is out of control. And if that is the false conclusion that is also reached, then sexual intimacy will be impeded as well. So Dr. Dew's findings in 2009 are probably still relevant even to this day. When you look at couples and their differences about finances and how they're allocated, in a document called His Money, Her Money, written in 1995 by John Paul, he examined the control and the allocation of money within a household. Here are 2 or 3 of the findings. Number 1, male-managed systems were associated with higher income levels and with male privileges in terms of decision-making and personal spending of money. In other words, what Dr. Pale discovered was, in a male-controlled financial home, it was more associated with the higher income. In other words, the male concluded, if I'm making the most money, then I should have the more say-so and the control over the finances. And he linked that with male privileges. In other words, I deserve to manage. I deserve to allocate. I deserve to handle all of the investments. I deserve to make the decisions. I deserve to determine what we spend and what we do not spend money on. A second component of what Dr. Pale found in terms of his money, her money, was the female managed homes. In the female managed systems, it was associated with lower income levels and with greater financial deprivation from the wives. In essence, what Dr. Pale was arguing is that when females who were typically seen to be not as powerful in the money earning segment because of glass ceilings and not fair hiring practices and all of that, when women come from homes or from single situations to where they had more limited resources, then the female had grown accustomed to managing her finances, and because she had limited finances, she would find herself being much more frugal in how she spent the funds. Or on the other hand, in order to give the appearance of having more status than maybe realistic, the female would not appropriate her funds in the proper direction. Maybe over shopping for clothing, maybe over splurging in terms of personal things for the home, and not really taking care of the home in an appropriate manner. But regardless, these are two of the findings of Dr. Pale. A third finding was the equality between the husband and the wife, which he discovered was the greatest where money was pooled and managed jointly. So regardless of whether the male made the most money or the female made less, where there was equality between the husband and the wife, it was discovered that this is where, when money was pooled, money managed jointly, that families argued and differed less about how money was to be spent. They came together with a commonality. They began to discuss what they were used to, what the female was accustomed to, and they came to a happy ground about how this household would handle its resources. In finding number 3, in terms of the equality between the husband and the wife, ironically, only 1/5 of all households studied by Dr. Pale operated on this system. Isn't that a sad finding? Only 1/5 of all of the households studied operated on, let's have one basket, let's have one discussion, and we have that discussion first jointly about how we're going to manage funds within this home. There was another study completed at Creighton University for marriage and family, and it found that time, sex, and money were 3 primary areas where marriage, or within the marriage, that often led to conflict. But ironically, finances were one of the big 3. Let me conclude with a text from the Old Testament book of 1 Kings about a family. 1 Kings 21. There was a king named Ahab. He has a wife named Jezebel. And there's a man named Naboth that has a vineyard. Ahab spake unto Naboth, saying, Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house, and I will give thee a better one. In other words, I'll buy your vineyard, I'll displace you, I'll put you somewhere else. Naboth decided, I'm not going to sell my vineyard, and it was strictly within his right. Ahab began to pout, and his wife soothed him, and she manipulated and had Naboth killed to give her husband what he wanted financially. As a couple, make sure that your differences do not lead you to sin in the relationship when it regards finances. I'll see you back in class again next time. Don't be late, and don't skip class.